This is Vemork, a factory laying deep within the mountains of Nazi-occupied Norway. At first glance, it appears to be an ordinary industrial plant, but looks can be deceiving, because this is no ordinary factory. Hidden in its basement lies the world's only large-scale production of heavy water, the final ingredient needed for Hitler to complete his atomic bomb. A small team of Allied soldiers is sent on a mission to destroy the facility, a mission that will most likely cost them their lives. The Germans have stationed 300 armed guards and covered the surrounding areas with landmines. The factory itself is built on a steep mountainside, with only a heavily guarded bridge offering access. In every sense, the factory is the ultimate fortress. This is the story of what Winston Churchill called the most important sabotage raid of the Second World War, an operation that did not go as planned. This is the story of Operation Gunnerside, a mission to save the world. April 1940, Germany invades Norway. Facing little resistance, the country is fully occupied within 2 months. One of the key strategic reasons for the occupation was the establishment of the Atlantic Wall, a vast network of coastal defenses built by Nazi Germany along the western edge of Europe. Its purpose was to prevent an Allied invasion from Britain across the English Channel. The Germans also seized the opportunity to exploit Norway's natural resources, including timber and fish. But the country hides another resource that could decide the fate of the war. Back in Berlin, German physicist Werner Heisenberg was studying nuclear fission. He believed it was possible to create a weapon powerful enough to obliterate an entire city, a city the size of London. The idea captivated the Wehrmacht, and the promise was a bomb no larger than a pineapple. In a nuclear fission, heavy water can serve as a moderator. A moderator slows neutrons down, which is crucial for sustaining a chain reaction. But why didn't the Germans just use graphite as a moderator, like the Americans did? Well, they simply didn't know that they had to use so-called pure graphite. Less than a month after the invasion of Norway, the Germans increased the heavy water production significantly. Back in Britain, this development caused alarm. They feared the Nazis were growing increasingly interest in heavy water, possibly to build an atomic bomb. The production had to be stopped. At first, the plan was to bomb the factory from the air, but the operation was deemed too risky. The plant was difficult to locate at night in the mountains, and any bombing raid would likely result in significant civilian casualties in the nearby Norwegian town. The Germans had also strung 3 thick cables across the valley, designed to tear apart low-flying aircrafts. Even if a bomber managed a direct hit, it might not be enough. The heavy water facilities was buried in the basement, protected by a massive concrete slab. It was eventually decided that the best chance of success lay in a glider-borne commander raid. Landing in a rugged terrain around the plant would be nearly impossible, but near the Møsvatn Dam a suitable landing site was identified. From there, the saboteurs would begin their journey towards Vemork, but the geography around the Vemork plant made any ground assault incredibly difficult. The factory was placed on the side of a steep mined valley. The only viable route was via a narrow suspension bridge, a bridge guarded around the clock. In secret, the Brits started Operation Freshman, a company of 34 saboteurs, carried by 2 wooden Horsa gliders, pulled by 2 Halifax planes. But before Operation Freshman can be executed, a group of hand-picked Norwegian soldiers are sent to Norway to prepare the landing site and escort the saboteurs to the target. This was Operation Grouse. All Grouse members were locals and had experience with the mountains surrounding the factory. Some of them even had experience in getting captured by the Gestapo, later to escape. The training began in early October and was designed to be relentless, not only to ensure that those who took part were at peak of their physical and mental fitness, but also to eliminate any men unable to cope with the difficult Norwegian winter terrain. The sappers were familiarized with the design of the plant and received training on the most efficient way to plant explosives to cause maximum damage. 18th of October 1942, the Grouse team parachuted onto the Hardangervidda plateau, but bad weather forced them to jump much farther west than planned. Carrying heavy gear, they had to ski over 80 kilometers through mountainous terrain. Eventually they found shelter in a small cabin near the planned landing site and waited for reinforcements to arrive. 1 month later, Operation Freshman was launched from Scotland. But before takeoff, each soldier was issued a cyanide capsule to bite on in case of capture. Back in Norway, the Grouse team received word that the gliders had reached the coastline. The landing site was ready. The commandos would arrive any moment. But minutes turned into hours, and no one came. The mission was launched during severe winter conditions. Thick cloud cover and violent turbulence caused the first glider team to crash into a mountain at Hestadfjell, destroying both the bomber and the glider. For the second team, the tow rope snapped mid-flight. The glider crashed land in Fyllesdal, while the bomber turned back to Scotland. The crashes claimed the lives of 27 men. The 14 survivors were hunted down by the Gestapo, later to be eliminated. Operation Freshman was a complete disaster. Due to the secrecy surrounding the mission, very little information was provided to the families of the soldiers at the time, other than that they were missing. Back on the Hardangervidda plateau, the Grouse team is still waiting. It is minus 30 degrees, and they are almost out of food. They are alone, and no one is coming. Although the Allied soldiers believed they had destroyed all sensitive material in the gliders, one map from the second glider was overlooked. When the Germans recovered it, they were able to identify the Vemork plant as the intended target. They immediately reinforced the factory's defenses. It became clear that a new team would be needed to carry out the mission in coordination with the surviving Grouse team. The new unit was given the codename Gunnerside. These men were all elite Norwegian paratroopers, resistance fighters who had fled occupied Norway to be recruited and trained by the British Special Operation Executives. Part of their training focused on operating independently without resupply. They learned how to scavenge food, fix weapons, navigate harsh terrain, and survive extreme cold. The members of the new team were well aware of the failure of the previous attempt, and that the Germans were preparing for a new raid. The Grouse team would once again guide the paratroopers to the factory, but because of the extensive training and the planning required to prepare the new team, the Grouse operatives had to survive 3 brutal months in the mountains.
Snøstormene herjer jevnlig i området og virvler snøen inn gjennom sprekkene i den vesle hytta. Vi er tomme for mat, og kreftene siver sakte ut av oss. Alle blir rammet av sykdom og feber, og da julen nærmer seg, har vi ennå ikke felt et eneste vilt. Den eneste næringen som holder liv i kroppene våre, er mose og rester av stearinlys.
Their days are short. They rise at daybreak, but by 4 in the afternoon it's already dark, leaving them with nothing to do but to crawl back into bed, conserving what little energy they have. But then their luck changes. On December 23rd, Paulson sets out for his usual hunting ground when he spots a herd of reindeer. Adrenaline surging, he drops to his knees and takes aim. He fires. The herd scatters. He fires again, but none of the animals fall. Then, following the tracks in the snow, he sees blood. Further ahead, he finds a downed reindeer. He drinks a cup of its warm blood and carries 20 kilos of meat back to the cabin. From that day forward, they experience a series of successful hunts, and they finally receive the message: Gunnerside is on its way. On February 17th, 1943, the Gunnerside team parachuted down near Lake Skrytten. They are completely lost, but manage to find a small hunting cabin. Inside, they came across a map. One point on the map is worn out by fingerprints, suggesting that previous visitors had likely been pointing to the location of the cabin that they were at. 10 days later, the two teams are reunited and the mission can finally begin. Grouse had discovered a path that avoids the heavily guarded suspension bridge. It's a risky route involving a steep descent down the icy gorge, but it might just work. Under cover of darkness, the saboteurs climb down the ravine, crawl across the frozen river, and scale the vertical cliff on the other side. They reach the back of the plant, cut through the perimeter fences, and enter the courtyard. To reach the factory's entrance, they must pass a German barracks, where enemy soldiers are gathered just meters away. They press themselves against the wall, sliding past the windows in silence, preparing for the worst. They reach the main factory door. It is locked, but this does not come as a surprise. They know of a ventilation shaft nearby that leads directly to the basement. Inside, the corridors are empty. They move silently. The entire layout is memorized. A German voice suddenly echoes outside. They freeze, but the footsteps fade into the distance. At last, they reach the heavy water electrolysis chambers, where only a steel door separates them from their objective. In one swift motion, they breach the door. To their surprise, they encounter no resistance, just a Norwegian caretaker who is more than willing to cooperate. They quickly place explosives on the vital equipment. The charges are perfectly measured, powerful enough to destroy the machinery, but quiet enough to not alert the entire valley. Just before setting the fuse, the caretaker intervenes. He asks politely if they could help him find his glasses, because it is impossible to find new ones during the war. They oblige. Once the glasses are found, they light the fuse. As a final gesture, they leave behind a Thompson submachine gun, a clear sign that this was a British-led operation to protect the local Norwegians from retaliation. The raid is a success. Over 500 kilograms of heavy water are destroyed, along with key electrolysis equipment. Although 3,000 German troops are dispatched to hunt them down, the saboteurs all escape without a single casualty. The Germans were later able to rebuild the plant and resume making heavy water. In November 1943, the Allies launched a massive bombing raid involving 160 American B-17 bombers, hoping to cripple the facility. However, the raid caused only limited damage to the plant itself due to its thick concrete floors, and tragically, 21 Norwegian civilians living nearby were killed. Subsequent air raids also failed to halt production entirely. But by then, the damage had already been done. The German nuclear program had been delayed beyond recovery. They would never have a working bomb before the end of the war in Europe. How much time the raids on Vemork actually cost the Nazis is still debated, but the saboteurs may have brought the Allies just enough time to prevent London from turning into a nuclear wasteland. An achievement a little more significant than a YouTuber sitting in his bedroom only having to deal with his comment section. I get a lot of questions on how I make my videos and what kind of courses I've been taking. From my engineering degree, I found out early that lectures never really did me any good, and that my way of learning relied on being practical and solve problems by myself. That's why I really like Brilliant. Instead of just reading or listening, you actually learn by doing, solving problems step by step, a method actually proven to be 6 times more effective. With Brilliant you get access to thousands of engaging lessons in topics like math, programming, data analysis and AI. Each course starts you out with the basics and then gradually builds you up to more complex challenges. I never really understood how AI actually works, and because it is super relevant for me as a content creator, I wanted to learn more about it. So instead of just reading tedious Wikipedia pages, I figured Brilliant would be the perfect tool to use. And the best thing was that the Brilliant app made it super easy for me to pull up a couple of courses while traveling this summer. To learn for free on Brilliant, go to brilliant.org/solvechannel, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the video description. Brilliant is also giving our viewers 20% off an annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant.